"And I want to raise a glass," Glenn Harrington announced, his baritone voice commanding the attention of 60 guests, packed into the grand ballroom of the family's Philadelphia estate, to Harrington Medical's most groundbreaking innovation yet. He paused for effect, letting the chandelier light catch the amber liquid in his crystal flute. His Armani tuxedo fit like it had been sewn onto his body. His salt and pepper hair was slicked back with precision. At 38, Glenn Harrington looked exactly like what he was, the heir apparent to a $400 million empire. Tech saves lives, spares families from tragedy's grip. And Harrington Medical will lead the charge into the future. 60 champagne flutes rose in unison. Crystal clinked against crystal. The string quartet held their bows. Victoria Harrington, matriarch of the dynasty, beamed from her position at her son's right hand, her emerald necklace a family heirloom worth more than most houses glittering against her collarbone. Then a voice sliced through the applause like a scalpel through flesh. "That's funny, Glenn. I don't remember giving you permission to toast my work." Every head in the ballroom swiveled toward the mahogany double doors. Emily Harrington stood in the entrance, her silhouette framed by the golden light of the foyer behind her. She wore a simple black sheath dress that cost $80 at Nordstrom Rack. No jewelry, no makeup beyond mascara. Her dark hair was pulled back in a practical ponytail. She looked nothing like a Harrington. She looked like someone who had come to burn the house down. Her heels clicked against the Italian marble as she walked into the stunned silence. Click, click, click. Each step measured, deliberate. The footsteps of someone who had rehearsed this moment in her mind for 4 years. Glenn's champagne glass froze an inch from his lips. A vein pulsed in his temple. "Emily, what are you doing here?" "I came to watch." She stopped 15 feet from the stage, close enough for everyone to see her face, far enough to address the entire room. "Check your phones, everyone. The countdown just hit midnight. I have a feeling you're all about to receive some interesting news." As if choreographed by an invisible hand, phones began vibrating throughout the ballroom. Purses buzzed. Jacket pockets hummed. One guest, a silver-haired hospital administrator from Jefferson, glanced down at his screen. His face drained of color. He showed it to the woman beside him, a venture capitalist from Boston, who had invested $12 million in Harrington Medical's cardiac division. She gasped audibly. The murmuring spread like a virus. Whispers became exclamations. Exclamations became chaos. The headline blazed across every screen. Harrington Medical co-founder, Emily Harrington launches. $800 million IPO reveals patent, theft by family corporation. Victoria's champagne flute slipped from her manicured fingers. It shattered against the marble floor, spraying crystal across her Valentino heels. She didn't notice. Her eyes were locked on her youngest daughter, with an expression that transcended fury. It was terror. Glenn slammed his glass onto the podium. Champagne sloshed over his hand. "You're lying. This is slander, defamation. Our lawyers will bury you so deep." "Your lawyers received my evidence package at 11:47 p.m. Emily's voice remained steady. "Surgical. 247 pages. Patent filings with timestamps from 2021. Email chains showing you requesting my algorithm. Recordings of you threatening legal action when I refused to surrender my source code. Expert testimony from Dr. Samuel Chen at Carnegie Mellon, who supervised my thesis and watched me develop this technology from scratch." She paused. "Everything admissible, everything verified, everything true." The silver-haired investor stepped forward, his phone still clutched in his trembling hand. "Glenn, is this true? The technology you've been promising us, the technology we've invested $43 million in, it's not yours?" "Of course it's ours." Glenn's voice cracked on the last word. "She's lying. She's mentally unstable. She's always been jealous of patent number US 20210142893A1. Emily cut him off without raising her voice. Filed April 15, 2021. Inventor, Emily Catherine Harrington. That's 6 months before your first investor presentation on this technology. The filing is public record. Check it yourself. 3 investors pulled out their phones simultaneously. The ballroom fell silent except for the sound of fingers tapping against screens. 30 seconds passed. 40. A minute. She's right. The Boston venture capitalist's voice was hollow. The patent is in her name. 6 months before Glenn's pitch deck, the room erupted. Investors pulled out phones, making frantic calls. Business partners backed toward the exits. A hospital administrator was already dictating a memo to his assistant. The string quartet sat frozen, bows suspended in mid-air, unsure whether to play or flee. Emily surveyed the chaos she had unleashed. 4 years of silence, 4 years of documentation, 4 years of being erased, dismissed, forgotten. It had all led to this moment. Happy New Year, everyone. Her voice cut through the pandemonium. I hope it's everything you deserve. But before the rest of that night unfolds, you need to understand the 4 years of darkness that made it necessary. If that opening grabbed you by the throat, hit that subscribe button right now. This story is about to get much darker before it gets lighter. Drop a comment telling me where you're watching from. I read every single one. And if you've ever had someone steal credit for your work, type I understand in the comments. You're not alone. The Harrington fortune was built on blood. Not metaphorically, literally. 3 generations of manufacturing surgical equipment, hospital beds, IV stands, and diagnostic monitors. The kind of business that thrives on human suffering and calls it healthcare. Richard Harrington Sr. had started the company in 1962 with a patent for an improved surgical clamp. His son, Richard Jr., had expanded it into a regional powerhouse. And Richard III, Emily's father, had taken it national, building a $400 million empire that supplied 60% of hospitals in the northeastern United States. The Harringtons lived in a 12,000-square-foot Georgian mansion on the main line outside Philadelphia. 8 bedrooms, 6 bathrooms, a tennis court, a pool house larger than most apartments, staff quarters for the housekeeper, the chef, the groundskeeper. Emily had grown up in that house. She had learned to walk on those marble floors. She had celebrated 18 birthdays in that formal dining room, and she had never once felt like she belonged there. Glenn was the golden child, 5 years older than Emily, effortlessly charming, with their father's jawline and their mother's social instincts. He played lacrosse at Princeton. He got his MBA at Wharton. He wore Tom Ford like it was denim and played golf with investors like it was breathing. When Glenn walked into a room, people turned to look. When he spoke, people leaned in to listen. When he smiled, people smiled back without knowing why. Emily was different. She was quiet where Glenn was loud, intense where he was breezy. She preferred algorithms to cocktail parties, research papers to golf courses, the company of computers to the company of people. She's always been odd, Victoria told guests at charity galas, her voice carrying just far enough for Emily to hear from across the room. Brilliant in that awkward way, you know. Can do mathematics in her head but can't hold a conversation. We hope she'll grow out of it. Emily never grew out of it. At Carnegie Mellon, she found her people other misfits, who spoke in code, who saw beauty in data patterns, who understood that being quiet didn't mean being empty. Her thesis advisor was Dr. Samuel Chen, a 53-year-old professor who had won awards for his work in neural network architecture. He saw something in Emily that her family had missed, not just intelligence, but vision. Your algorithm, he told her during their 3rd meeting, spreading her research across his cluttered desk, could change everything, predicting cardiac events before they happen. That's not incremental improvement. That's a paradigm shift. Emily's algorithm analyzed patterns in heart rate variability, blood pressure fluctuations, and oxygen saturation levels. By threading together multiple neural networks in a novel configuration, it could identify pre-event indicators up to 6 hours before a cardiac episode. Enough time to get a patient to a hospital, enough time to administer preventive treatment, enough time to save a life. She graduated summa cum laude. Her family didn't attend the ceremony. Glenn had a golf tournament with potential investors, and Victoria considered it more important for the family to be seen supporting him. Emily walked across the stage alone, accepted her diploma alone, and celebrated alone at a Thai restaurant near campus. where the pad thai cost $9, and the waitress remembered her name. She was 24 years old. She had just developed technology that could revolutionize cardiac care, and no one in her family had bothered to show up. April 2021. A family dinner at the Harrington estate. Emily sat at the far end of the 20-foot dining table, pushing her beef Wellington around a Wedgwood plate that cost more than her monthly rent. The conversation swirled around her quarterly projections, investor meetings, hospital contracts, a language her family spoke fluently and expected her to ignore. Then Glenn turned to her. "Emily." He smiled that smile, the one that had closed 100 deals. "I heard you're working on something interesting. Heart monitoring technology?" Emily's fork froze halfway to her mouth. In 26 years of family dinners, Glenn had never once asked about her work. She glanced at her mother, who was studying her wineglass with suspicious intensity. At her father, who was suddenly very interested in his cufflinks. "Predictive cardiac analytics," she said carefully. "The algorithm analyzes patterns in heart rate variability, blood pressure fluctuations, and oxygen saturation to identify pre-event indicators." "English, Emily." Victoria's voice was sharp enough to cut glass. "Not everyone speaks computer." "It predicts heart attacks before they happen." Glenn set down his fork. The casual facade dropped for half a second, revealing something calculating underneath. That could be worth something. It could save lives," Emily corrected. "Same thing, in our business." The smile returned, warmer now. "You should bring it to Harrington Medical. We have the infrastructure, the hospital relationships, the manufacturing capacity. We could get this to market in 2 years. You could be part of the family business, Emily." Finally. Finally. That word hung in the air like smoke, as if she had been waiting her entire life for permission to matter, as if Glenn was offering her a gift instead of asking for one. "I'll think about it," she said. That night, she drove back to her studio apartment in Pittsburgh, 500 square feet, second-hand furniture, a view of a parking lot, and called Dr. Chen. "My brother wants me to bring my algorithm to the family company." "And what do you want?" "I want to be part of something. I want them to see me." Dr. Chen was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was grave. "Emily, your family is in this industry. They understand intellectual property. They understand what your work is worth." He paused. "Protect yourself first. File the patents. Document everything. Create a paper trail that can't be disputed. And whatever you do, don't give them the source code. They're my family. That's exactly why I'm worried." The next morning, Emily contacted a patent attorney named Margaret Sullivan, a sharp-eyed woman in her 60s who specialized in protecting inventors from exactly the kind of corporate maneuvering Emily feared. "File everything," Margaret advised, spreading Emily's documentation across her conference table. Every iteration of the algorithm, every line of code, every research note, timestamps on all of it. "If anyone ever tries to claim this work, we'll have a paper trail that even the most expensive lawyers can't break." On April 15th, 2021, Emily filed her first patent, application number US 2021-01-42893A1. Inventor, Emily Catherine Harrington. She didn't plan to use it as a weapon, she just wanted insurance. 2 weeks later, Emily drove to Harrington Medical Headquarters in Philadelphia. The building was a monument to family ambition, 18 stories of glass and steel. The name Harrington emblazoned in bronze letters 3 feet high above the entrance. Emily had visited exactly twice in her life, once for a school project at age 12, once for her father's 60th birthday party. Glenn's office occupied the entire 18th floor, corner views in every direction. A mahogany desk the size of a small boat, walls covered with framed awards, magazine covers, photographs of Glenn shaking hands with senators and hospital CEOs. He greeted her with a hug that felt rehearsed. "Emily, my brilliant sister, I'm so glad you came." For 2 hours, she explained her technology, the neural network architecture, the data processing requirements, the clinical applications. Glenn took notes on a yellow legal pad, nodding enthusiastically, asking questions that showed he'd done his homework. "This could revolutionize our cardiac monitoring division," he said, leaning back in his leather chair. "We're already the largest supplier to hospitals in the Northeast. Imagine if our monitors could predict events instead of just recording them. We'd own the market." "The algorithm would need careful integration," Emily said. "It's not just software. It requires specific hardware capabilities, processing speeds, data handling protocols." "We have engineers for that." Glenn waved his hand dismissively. "Your job would be to consult. Help us understand the technology. We'd pay you, of course, a consulting fee. $20,000 a month. $20,000 a month. More than she made in a year as a research assistant." "What about ownership?" she asked. Glenn laughed, a warm, dismissive sound. "Emily, we're family. Everything we do benefits all of us. The trust fund, the inheritance, the family name. You're part of that whether you're in the office or not." He slid a document across his desk. 15 pages of dense legal text. Standard consulting agreement. Non-disclosure provisions, conflict of interest clauses, the usual. Our lawyers require it for anyone who works with proprietary company information. Emily read every word. The NDA covered Harrington Medical's proprietary information. It said nothing about her personal intellectual property. It said nothing about transferring her patents. It was exactly what Glenn claimed, a standard consulting agreement. "This seems reasonable," she said. She signed it. Then she drove home and scanned a copy to Margaret Sullivan. "Smart," Margaret said. "This NDA doesn't touch your personal IP. Whatever you developed before this agreement and whatever you develop independently remains yours. They can't claim it." "So I'm protected?" "On paper, yes. But Emily," Margaret's voice softened, "paper doesn't protect you from family. Be careful." For 6 months, Emily drove to Philadelphia twice a week. She explained her technology to Glenn's engineering team. She answered questions, provided documentation, walked them through the underlying mathematics. She watched their faces shift from skepticism to understanding, to something that looked uncomfortably like hunger. She never gave them the core algorithm. She never handed over her source code. She provided concepts, frameworks, principles, but not construction. What she didn't realize was how much they were taking. October 2021, Glenn invited her to an investor presentation. "I want you to see how your work is contributing to our future," he said on the phone, his voice warm with fraternal pride. "You've earned this, Emily." The conference room was on the 17th floor. Walnut table, 18 leather chairs, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Delaware River. 12 investors from Boston and New York, representing over $100 million in potential funding. Emily sat in the back row, invisible as always, while Glenn took the stage. Harrington Medical is pioneering the next generation of cardiac monitoring technology. He clicked to the first slide, a sleek graphic showing a heart monitor with glowing data streams. "Our proprietary algorithm, developed in-house by our research team, can predict cardiac events with unprecedented accuracy." Emily's blood turned to ice. On the screen was a diagram of her neural network architecture, her terminology, her framework. The phrase threaded analysis nodes, a term she had coined in her thesis, was printed in bold letters at the center of the slide. The technology works by analyzing patterns in heart rate variability, blood pressure, fluctuations, and oxygen saturation levels, Glenn continued, his voice smooth as silk. "By threading together multiple data streams in a novel configuration, we can identify pre-event indicators up to 6 hours before a cardiac episode." Her words, her exact words, spoken as if they had originated in his mouth. An investor in the front row, a woman with steel gray hair and sharp eyes, glanced at Emily. "And who is this?" Glenn didn't miss a beat. "That's my sister Emily. She's been consulting with us on some of the technical details. Brilliant with the granular work." Consulting, technical details, granular work. 3 phrases that reduced 3 years of groundbreaking research to secretarial assistance. Emily waited until the presentation ended. waited until the investors filed out, shaking Glenn's hand, promising follow-up meetings. Waited until the conference room was empty, except for the two of them. That's my work. Her voice shook with the effort of staying calm. You presented my algorithm as Harrington Medical's development. Glenn was packing his laptop, his movements unhurried. Our algorithm, Emily. You've been consulting for us. Your contributions are part of the company's intellectual property now. The NDA covers your proprietary information, not mine. I have patents filed in my own name. Patents can be challenged. He looked up, and the mask was gone. No more warm smiles. No more fraternal affection. Just cold calculation, especially when there's documented evidence of employment, consulting agreements, collaboration. Our lawyers are very, very good, Emily, and they're much more expensive than anything you could afford. He closed his laptop bag and walked toward her. Stopped close enough that she could smell his cologne, something expensive, something that smelled like money. Your family. We protect our own, but don't make this difficult. His voice dropped to a whisper. You won't win. He walked out. Emily stood alone in the empty conference room, staring at the city lights reflected in the window, and felt something shift inside her. The desperate desire for approval that had driven her since childhood began to crystallize into something harder, colder, more determined. She drove back to Pittsburgh that night with her hands gripped so tight on the steering wheel that her knuckles went white. When she got home, she opened her laptop and started a new folder. She named it Evidence. If you've ever had someone look you in the eye and steal your work while calling it collaboration, you know exactly what Emily is feeling right now. Hit that like button. Share this video with someone who needs to hear this story. And stay with me because Emily is about to do something her brother never expected. The exclusion began within weeks. First, the invitations stopped. Victoria's assistant had sent weekly emails for years. Dinner this Sunday, 6 p.m., formal attire. And suddenly Emily's inbox was empty. She would see photos on Instagram. Her parents, Glenn, Vivian, gathered around tables laden with food, raising glasses in toasts to successes she wasn't allowed to witness. Then Thanksgiving 2022. Emily drove to Philadelphia anyway, telling herself that no one could exclude her from a family holiday. She bought a bottle of wine, a good one, $60, more than she could afford, and rehearsed what she would say. Something about new beginnings, about putting the past behind them, about being a family again. The housekeeper, Maria, answered the door. Maria had worked for the Harringtons for 20 years. She had bandaged Emily's scraped knees. She had made her hot chocolate on snow days. Now she stood in the doorway, with pity written across her weathered face. Miss Emily, I'm sorry. I wasn't told to expect you. I'm family, Maria. I don't need an invitation. But when she walked into the dining room, the table was full. 20 guests, business partners, family friends, distant cousins she barely recognized, people who had never shared a meal with the Harringtons, but had apparently earned seats that Emily had lost. 20 place settings, not one of them for her. Victoria looked up from her position at the head of the table. Her expression flickered surprise, annoyance, something almost like guilt, before settling into polite coldness. Emily, we weren't expecting you. It's Thanksgiving, Mother. Yes, and as you can see, we have a full table. Perhaps next time you could call ahead. 20 faces stared at her. Glenn, smirking behind his wine glass, enjoying her humiliation. Vivian, looking anywhere but at her sister. Her father, suddenly fascinated by his napkin. Business partners exchanging awkward glances, wondering what family drama they had stumbled into. Emily set the wine bottle on the sideboard. Her hands were shaking. Her vision was blurring with tears she refused to let fall. I understand, she said. Her voice didn't waver. Happy Thanksgiving, everyone. She walked out, got in her car, drove 40 miles to a diner off the Pennsylvania Turnpike, where she ordered turkey with gravy and mashed potatoes from a waitress named Dolores, who called her honey, and refilled her coffee without being asked. She ate alone. She cried alone. And when she got home at midnight, She opened her laptop and added another entry to the evidence folder. The 24th of November, 2022. Arrived at family Thanksgiving. No place setting. Asked to leave by V. Harrington in front of 20 witnesses. Documentation. Dr. Chen had told her to document everything, and Emily had learned her lesson well. March 2023. 6:14 a.m. Emily's phone rang. She had been awake for an hour already, working on a paper about applications of her algorithm in pediatric cardiology. The name on the screen made her stomach clench. Glenn, we need to talk. In person, today. No greeting, no pretense of warmth. She heard something in his voice she had never heard before. Fear. She drove to Philadelphia. Glenn's assistant waved her through, without the usual security protocols. Another sign that something was wrong. The elevator ride to the 18th floor felt longer than usual. The hallway felt emptier. Glenn was pacing behind his desk when she entered. His tie was loosened. His hair was disheveled. Dark circles bruised the skin beneath his eyes. We need the full algorithm. No preamble, no small talk. The complete source code. Everything. Emily sat down, uninvited, in one of the leather chairs facing his desk. What happened to your in-house development team? Don't play games with me. His voice cracked. The FDA approval process requires complete documentation of the underlying technology. Our engineers have been trying to reverse engineer your work for 18 months, and they can't do it. They don't understand how the neural networks thread together. They can't replicate the processing efficiency. Without the source code, we can't get approval. Without approval, we can't bring the product to market. Without the product, he stopped, swallowed. Investors are asking questions. The board is getting nervous. We've made promises we can't keep. Because you promised them my work without actually having it. It's your family's work, your family's company. The patent is in my name, Glenn. The timestamps prove I developed it before I ever consulted for you. The NDA I signed doesn't transfer my personal intellectual property. Emily's voice was calm, almost gentle. I'm not giving you my source code. Glenn's face flushed crimson. Do you have any idea what you're doing? This company employs 2,000 people. If the stock crashes, if investors pull out, if we can't deliver on our promises, that's not my problem. It is your problem. He slammed both hands on his desk. The coffee cup rattled. A pen rolled onto the floor. You're a Harrington. Your trust fund comes from this company. Your inheritance, everything you have, everything you are, exists because of this family. Emily stood. She smoothed her skirt. She looked her brother directly in the eyes. I don't want your money, Glenn. I never did. I wanted to be seen. I wanted to matter. I wanted my family to recognize that I had accomplished something worth celebrating. Her voice hardened. Instead, you stole my work, presented it as your own, and erased me from the family because I wouldn't play along. So no, I'm not giving you my source code. I'm not saving your company. I'm not protecting you from the consequences of your own theft. She walked toward the door. Emily. Glenn's voice stopped her. It was different now. Lower, more dangerous. If you walk out that door, I will destroy you. I will tie you up in litigation for the next decade. I will drain every penny you have in legal fees. I will make sure no investor ever touches anything with your name on it. You will spend the rest of your life fighting and losing. Emily turned back. She smiled, the first genuine smile she had felt in months. Thank you, Glenn. For what? For that threat. I wanted to make sure I captured it clearly. She glanced up at the smoke detector mounted above his desk. The smoke detector she had installed 3 months ago, during a visit when Glenn was in a meeting and his assistant had let her wait in his office. It wasn't a smoke detector. Glenn followed her gaze. His face went from red to white in the space of a heartbeat. Pennsylvania is a one-party consent state, Glenn. I consented. She opened the door. Have a nice day. She walked out of Harrington Medical for the last time, her heels clicking against the marble floor, her heart pounding with a mixture of terror and exhilaration. The war had begun. Summer 2023. Emily built CardioSense from nothing. A warehouse in Pittsburgh's Strip District. 3,000 square feet of exposed brick and possibility. Two co-founders, Dr. James Liu, hardware engineer, and Sarah Okonkwo, data scientist. Both had worked with Emily at Carnegie Mellon. Both believed in her vision. They worked 18-hour days, slept on air mattresses, survived on ramen and determination. Emily burned through her savings, sold her car, cashed out her grandmother's trust fund, the only family money that wasn't tied to Harrington Medical. By September 2023, they had a working prototype. By January 2024, UPMC agreed to clinical trials. By June, the results were in. 47 cardiac events predicted. 45 patients received intervention. 44 survived. The technology worked. Lives were being saved. And investors were lining up. Emily scheduled the IPO for January 1, 2025, the same night as her family's annual gala. The timing was deliberate. November 2024, Rachel Torres from Business Insider called with questions about Emily's family connections to Harrington Medical. "I have documentation," Emily said. "Patents, emails, recordings, expert testimony. Are you prepared to publish the truth? That's what journalism is for." The interview lasted 6 hours. Rachel flew to Pittsburgh twice more to verify everything. The article was scheduled to publish at midnight on New Year's Eve, the exact moment Emily planned to walk into her family's party. "This isn't just about business, is it?" Rachel asked. "No, it's about finally being seen." December 20th. Victoria called to make sure Emily knew she wasn't welcome at New Year's Eve. "Glenn has critical investors attending. We can't afford distractions." "Don't worry, Mother. I understand perfectly." Emily paused. "Enjoy your party. Really savor it. It will be the last one for quite a while." She hung up before Victoria could ask what she meant. The fallout from New Year's Eve was catastrophic. By January 3rd, Harrington Medical's stock dropped 37%. 3 hospital networks froze contracts. 2 board members resigned. By January 4th, the SEC opened an inquiry. Glenn held a disastrous press conference where he called Emily mentally unstable before walking off stage when reporters asked about the recordings. The clip went viral. 14 million views in 24 hours. That moment watching Glenn's empire crumble while Emily's rose, that's the turning point. If you're still here, drop a fire emoji in the comments. And stay with me. The resolution is coming. January 8th, Vivian called. "I knew what Glenn was doing," she said through tears. "I knew, and I said nothing. I was too scared, too comfortable. I have messages from Glenn asking me to convince you to cooperate, messages from Mother telling me to keep you away from family events. I'm willing to share them. Why? Because I'm 42 years old, and I don't know who I am outside their expectations. You figured that out. I want to learn how." January 12th. Their father called. "I knew," Richard confessed. "I knew, and I did nothing because I was a coward. The board asked me to return as interim CEO. I agreed on one condition: full transparency. Everything Glenn did comes out." "I don't want compensation," Emily said. "I want acknowledgement, public and permanent. I'll make it happen." January 20th. Glenn released a public statement. "I owe my sister Emily Harrington a public apology. For 4 years, I took credit for work that was entirely hers. I presented her algorithm to investors as Harrington Medical's development. I pressured her to surrender her intellectual property. When she refused, I threatened to destroy her. I was wrong. I was arrogant. I stole from someone who trusted me. I am stepping down from all roles, effective immediately. Emily, I'm sorry. You deserved a brother who celebrated your brilliance instead of trying to steal it." James looked at Emily. "How do you feel?" "Empty. But I'd rather lose them than lose myself." February 2025. The Women in Healthcare Innovation Summit. 1,500 people in the audience. 50,000 streaming worldwide. Emily gripped the podium and spoke. Everyone here knows about my family, and the biggest news of theft and misinformation in recent years. For most of my life, I was told I was too quiet, too focused, too different. My family tried to reshape me. I spent 30 years believing I was the problem. But you can't earn recognition from people who have already decided you don't deserve it. So I stopped trying to earn their approval. I started documenting their deceit. I built a paper trail that spoke for itself. And then I built a company not to prove them wrong, but to prove myself right. To every woman who has been told she's too much or not enough, you are not the problem. The people who can't see your value are the problem, and you don't owe them your silence. Document everything. Protect your work. And when the time is right, tell the truth. My name is Emily Harrington. My technology predicts heart attacks before they happen, and no one will ever take credit for my work again. Standing ovation. 1,500 people on their feet. December 31st, 2025. San Francisco. Emily's apartment overlooked the bay. CardioSense was now valued at $1.2 billion. 300 hospitals. 4,000 lives saved in the first year. Her living room was full. James and Sarah. Dr. Chen. Vivian. 3 months into therapy, learning who she was. A dozen friends who knew her story and stood beside her anyway. Her father called at 11:30. Harrington Medical is announcing the Emily Harrington Innovation Fund. Full funding for female engineers and scientists. 20 students in the first class. You didn't have to do that. I know, but it's a start. I love you, sweetheart. I love you too. The countdown began. 10, 9, 8. James handed her champagne. Ready for another year? Ready for a lifetime. 3, 2, 1. Fireworks exploded over the bay. Emily stood at her window and thought about the girl who had eaten Thanksgiving alone in a diner off the Pennsylvania Turnpike. She wasn't that girl anymore. She had never been invisible. She had just been surrounded by people who refused to see her. Now she was surrounded by people who did. People ask Emily if she regrets what she did. If it was worth losing her family, she didn't lose them. They lost her the moment they decided her work wasn't real, her voice wasn't valid, her presence wasn't wanted. The lesson isn't revenge. It's documentation. It's boundaries. It's knowing the difference between keeping the peace and keeping your integrity. If someone is claiming your work, document it. If you're being pushed out of spaces you built, record it. If you're being told you're too much or not enough, remember, the people saying it are wrong. Your voice matters. Your work matters. No one has the right to erase you. This was Emily's story. What's yours? If this story changed something in you, like this video, subscribe to this channel, share it with one person who needs to hear it, then go to the comments and tell me your story. The time you were erased, the time you fought back, the moment you stopped disappearing. I read every single one. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. See you in the next story.